This is the talk of Music City Real Estate.
Welcome back to another episode of the Talk of Music City Real Estate,
where we educate and motivate all things real estate.
My name is Monte Mohr with Realty One Group Music City.
Hey, and I'm Carrie Ann with CMG Financial and my mortgage team.
Every week we'll be posting a new episode chock full of Nashville real estate value.
Yes, and you can follow along and subscribe at talkmusiccity.com.
Got a question for us? Ask away at questions@talkmusiccity.com.
Monty.
Carrie Ann, good to see you.
So good to see you. Look who is in the house
who's
today.
The bearded one next to you?
I know. One who doesn't need an introduction, I think.
A lot of people know who he is.
He
Mr.
is.
Art Kelly.
Welcome.
Art, good to see you. Thank you for joining us
Thanks
today.
for having me. I appreciate it.
And you are one popular guy with the recent topic of with NARA and everything. I'm sure you enjoy talking about that topic as much as I do.
Yeah, so much. I'm tired of it already.
I'm sure everybody is. But
yeah. So when it all came out, Art reached out to me immediately and said, I'm working on sharing more about it to agents, and would you be open to hosting a class? And so we stepped right out and did that for many agents. So he is one that is a true educator by within his heart and shares a lot. So plus he's a rock star real estate agent himself. So.
Yeah, I gotta admit, Art, I was genuinely impressed with your presentation. Because you're easy to listen to. You got a wealth, and one of the things, just to be real, is that you intersperse within your material wisdom from the past. I love that about you. Okay, I mean, most people don't know who Jim Rohn is, or Zig Ziglar, or some of these people that you quote. I applaud you for bringing back to the forefront some of these folks that have that had wonderful material to say that's been duplicated in many different ways over the years, but it does my spirit good to see those, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, no, I mean I've been inspired probably since I got in. I've been doing this for 8 years now as an agent, and so one of the things that I found that was the most important thing for me to do was to get my mind in the right place all the time.
Amen.
And so I discovered a lot of those guys through that process. So
I've said for decades that the real challenge isn't out there. It's not with who's running the company or country. It's not about interest rates. It's about the biggest challenge is winning this battleground right here between our ears.
That's right.
And we have to be intentional to do that. If we think we're just going to watch the news media and just coast along and win that battle, we're not. I'm sorry. I'm convinced over the years we're not. We've got to be proactively taking in the right information that will build ourselves up, hanging with the right people, believing the similar things, to help us grow through this experience. Because honestly, there's some folks that are having a challenged time out there. I'm embracing this time because I know, as a 40-year veteran in the industry, that a lot of folks, unfortunately, won't have the mental strength or the commitment to press on forward when things are a little tougher. And I know there's going to be greater opportunity for those of us who decide to stick with it.
Yeah, I think fighting the past or embracing the future and change, I think, is always a good thing. It's never easy. It's never fun.
No,
it's not
it's
one
painful.
we don't want to do. But it definitely, I think, allows those that are really committed. We talk about, are you interested? Are you committed? Truly committed to their business? Really rise, right? I don't think there's a group of folks that are within our community that are not at all even, their feathers are not even ruffled, meaning they just feel like this is going to be an opportunity for something really great to come out of it. And yes, change needs to happen, right? We need to tweak, we need to pivot a little bit, but, you kind of coming in, a little bit of your background, maybe you want to share that. 8 years in real estate. What'd you do prior to that?
Yeah, so I was a jack of all trades, master of none, pretty much.
Okay.
I've lived in Murfreesboro for 24 years now, and I worked in nonprofit for a while, worked with teenagers, and then I did worked at Nissan for about 5 years on the night shift, and I've delivered bread and delivered snacks and candy, and worked in the school system, worked as a roofing contractor. I guess I had a come to Jesus conversation with my wife when I was about 40, and she's like, I hope you figure out what you're going to do when you grow up, because you've already grown up, and we've got kids to feed, mouths to feed. And
so you jumped into real estate?
I had no idea.
Holy
I didn't
cow.
know what I was doing.
Yeah.
And honestly, it's the most rewarding work I've ever done. It is the most difficult work I've ever done.
Yeah.
Nobody told me that when you become a real estate agent, it's kind of like, imagine every day you wake up and you don't have a job, and you got to go on the job hunt, and then you get a job, and then you close that deal, and you're without a job again. So you're perpetually unemployed, and so you got to figure out a way to make this thing sustainable. And so over the years, that's where a lot of my FriendMaker framework came from, was learning that it was my friends that was sustaining my business.
And I love that. I love that analogy.
So, yeah.
We're going to talk about that another time. But today I'd like to talk about what you came to Carrie Ann's recent event to discuss, and that is to help empower and encourage the agents by having, hopefully by practice, a knee-jerk reaction when certain times, whether they're working with a seller or whether they're working with a buyer, on how to navigate through these changes that are taking place. As of to my last understanding, I think it's August 17th that this is supposed to take effect. But we're encouraging our agents, obviously, to not wait till August 17th to start practicing on their clients, but to be practicing with their dog or their mom and dad or somebody. But let's start getting that flow down as to how the conversation should look like, because you can, as a good communicator, you can not just wait till it happens and respond in defense, but I love how you start this, is I'm sure you've heard about, I think that's a great soft way to do it. But what did you do to create this material that we're going to discuss some of today? Did you just sit down one day, or did you study other speakers? Or I love the fact that you are an active real estate professional out there, not just somebody who read a book and decided to become a coach, as some are out there. No offense to those people, but the reason why I'm still, as a broker of 220 agents, the reason I'm still active in the market, first to pay the bills, of course, but second of all, so I'm a relevant broker owner who I can feel the pain of my agents. So this is coming from experience, these responses, and I love that. Okay. Because that's the only way they have any value is real life experience,
Absolutely. Well, I drew a lot of what I wrote and created in this particular class was from my personal experience the last 8 years of just learning and failing and trying. And but I've also had some really great mentors along the way. And so brokers and other people here that speak into the market. And I asked several different just leading voices in our area. Y'all know Grant Hammond. Grant and I had a conversation right before. And I respect Grant because he's just kind of a no BS kind of guy, and he just shares that kind of stuff. But several of my old brokers, I sat down, I was like, what would you say if you were me? And the overwhelming answer that I kept getting from everybody was, we've all got to figure out how to communicate our value. Value is the number one answer as to how we get through all of this.
And confidently share that, right?
That's right.
With a true confidence versus, sometimes you can hear some people and it's like you don't even believe what they're saying, so really put the shoulders back and speak with confidence. Yeah, for sure.
And so I love the script. And so before we get going too far in here, if somebody, here's nuggets in this script, which I know you will, and you'd like to get your own copy, what's the best way to do that?
If you go to my website, artkelly.org, there's a contact place on there where you can find my email. You can just email me directly. You can call me, pop me a text.
Art Kelly.
Artkelly.org.
Kelly.
Yep. And you can just reach out directly to me, or you can find me on Facebook, Art Kelly. I have a page called FriendMaker Workshops and Coaching on Facebook, and you can go there. You can like that page. You can message me directly through there.
That's pretty cool that we're sitting here talking with with an author, it looks like here.
Yes.
Carrie Ann. FriendMaker, how to build a business on friendship. I'm looking forward to that conversation.
He's definitely a big deal.
Yeah.
I love it.
But you can just reach out to me that way. Cause at the end of the day, if I can help anybody figure out how to be more confident. A lot of it is just, a lot of us don't know how to have conversations with people. A lot of this, I think it's a generational thing to a certain degree, but this whole digital world is, it tends to go impersonal. And so learning how to keep personal while we're still dealing with folks that are used to sitting with a screen in front of their faces all the time. that's important. And so, yeah, it's about learning how to actually have real conversations with human beings that are on the other side and being
real.
Being confidently honest with them about, I think a lot of where we're at, the problem we're in is because we weren't being honest with our clients about how we get paid. It was the elephant in the room. Nobody wants to talk about their commissions. And so, but I mean, at the end of the day, like, this is a business. We've got to be able to talk about our business in a business-like way, professional way.
Right.
And our clients need to know how we get paid. And if they don't know how we get paid, that's a problem. And so we don't have to belabor the point or do it too much, but I mean, there needs to be a part of our conversation with our consults, with our buyers and our sellers, where we're talking about money.
We wouldn't expect anybody else to work for free, right?
No.
Meaning, so we wouldn't expect, or the person that's talking to you, there's no expectation for them to do work for no payment, right? Everybody is working for something. If not, we would all be part of nonprofits and, just doing, good. But I do think there was a perception, right, for years, and some agents did jump on the bandwagon of trying, to just make it easier, and not talk about it. Sometimes you don't want to bring up things just because you think it's easier, but laying everything out on the line very clearly. I also think while you stepping out of your comfort zone and talking about your worth really puts and holds you accountable to what you're saying, right?
I love
think
that
that's
part
important.
of it. I love that aspect.
And it has everybody rise, to the occasion of doing the right thing. Similar to the world of lending, right? You have direct lenders, you have brokers, right? You have different folks that have different compensations. They all do the same thing, right? And so if they knew that they were making this much more versus that, you would think that everybody should be straightforward with a clear understanding of what they're doing for the dollar that they're making, for sure.
Yeah, we've got to learn how to put our money where our mouth is and our mouth where our money is.
I mean, I really agree about conveying the value, but it starts with believing in your heart that you're worth that value.
Yes.
I think that's where there's a disconnection as well, because let's face it, a few years ago, people were flying by the seat of their pants. They weren't having to return calls. They weren't having to, do the things that are necessary to be a professional.
That's right.
And got a little sloppy. I think a hot market makes for sloppy salespeople, to be honest with you.
And I think that all this is doing is highlighting that we haven't been doing the stuff that we should have been doing.
Absolutely.
And so, like, these two big points on you got to get our buyers, like, everybody's all upset that they've got to get buyers rep agreements now. I'm like, why were you not doing that before?
Yeah, exactly.
Everybody's upset that the MLS isn't going to have the commission written on it. But I mean, we should have all been calling the listing agent every time we had a buyer.
Well,
asking that, hey,
that's
is
part
this
of our
a true number? Is this real?
Part of our test to see if somebody has got their stuff together or not.
Right.
When you just get an offer out of the clear blue and no communication, no ask about what's best for your, what's your seller looking for besides the price, what's else that's important, that kind of conversation. I was just sharing on our huddle call the other morning about when you find yourself, because a lot of people don't focus on the listing side of things. Until you do have a hot listing, it's hard to appreciate the vast, incredible difference between offer to offer, agent to agent, what they present, how they present it, what kind of effort do they communicate and so forth. Because I've said for years that however that agent communicates to you now as a listing agent, however that buyer's agent communicates with you or not, it's not going to get any better as time goes on. That's your first date. If the first date came smelling bad or whatever, it's not going to get any better than that. I'm sorry.
Oh my!
So true.
Oh my! Why are we dating people who smell? What's happening?
You never get a second chance to make a first impression.
Right.
Yeah.
Maybe change the. Okay.
Well, anyhow, you know what I'm saying. So let's jump on. Here's an example here of what you've got here for when you're working with a seller.
But one thing I want to bring up though is I do think you're worth every dollar.
Yeah.
But I don't have the money to pay you every dollar. I think that's what we're struggling with too, right? There's the 80-20 rule. I take applications with consumers every day, all day. And we get to the asset section of the application. And I do feel a heaviness that comes across when we get to that section, and we tiptoe around it to a point where I say, do you have a checking? Yes, I do. Is that money in, money out for bills, or do we keep a balance within that checking account, right? Versus me saying how much, because if I say how much and they don't feel like it's a lot, they feel like I'm, coming down on them type
Right.
of, there's that kind of feeling. And so then we talk about the savings. So a large percentage of folks want to buy home ownership, right? They're excited to buy home ownership. It could be their second home, right? It maybe not even the first, and all their money, is put, in maybe the equity of one house, and they don't have the cash on hand, right? And so we do have, not only do we need to talk about, talk about how to navigate that conversation, right, with confidence, right, and share about your worth. It's now, does the client have the money, and or how can we navigate the next section of the conversation with the seller still being willing to, contribute towards that. So I think that's a two-part piece that we have to work through, because I do think there's a lot of people with great hearts that want to pay folks, right? We had one recently, actually, and I see that they wrote that they would pay $1,500 towards the buyer's commission. It's written in there, and actually it's a RG agent, and there's no money.
Yeah.
I mean, for me to do the loan, like all the money to get the loan approved that was going to be possibly going to the agent had to go towards the down payment to get them approved, right? So now what happens?
Yeah.
So so there's multiple layers, that we have to navigate through.
Well, I think a lot of it still is going to come down to our ability to do the thing that all of the buyers and sellers that are out there are hiring us to do, which is negotiate.
Right.
So there's a lot of different studies that have shown the number one skill that people are looking for in their real estate agent is the ability to negotiate. And so if I don't have the ability to negotiate my commission with a seller's agent, how can I be expected to negotiate the terms and the price and everything else that I'm being expected to do? And so it is going to create some complications, and I think there's definitely going to be some interesting stuff that we're all going to have to kind of navigate as we go through it. I still believe, and most everybody I've talked to that I respect in this industry, looking at all the new changes that are coming, everybody still kind of tends to lean towards the fact that most sellers are still going to probably be willing to offer some kind of a buyer's agent incentive somehow throughout that process.
Well, that's where we've got to, as professionals, convey to them they're only hurting themselves to not
that's
do that.
It, and I think I've heard a lot of folks, Tom Ferry, Brian Buffini, a lot of these guys have basically said it's going to be the Wild West for probably 6 to 12 months. And then after a while, there's going to come some kind of a new normal that we're going to experience. But this first few months of it, it's been an interesting year. You got election year, you got weird interest rates, and this whole commission conversation all happening at the same time.
Yeah, it's a perfect storm.
So it's definitely going to create some interesting turbulence.
You've been in the business 8 years. I've been in the business for 40 years. And I'm going to tell you a real quick story about, Carrie Ann's heard me say this before, but here's my concern about where we're heading. And I'm sorry, this is a distraction maybe, but hopefully I'm wrong.
Okay.
But when I got my license, just lost it. There it is. When I got my license back in early 80s, my first listing appointment, the buyer or the seller took me into the part of the house and he said, "See that stain up in the ceiling? Don't worry about that. I'm going to put some kills on that and paint over it, and nobody will ever be able to see it." And I went back to the office and I told my broker at the time, "Hey, this is what he said. That didn't feel right. Are we hiding stuff now?" And he goes, "Well, that's what caveat emptor looks like. That's what buyer beware looks like, because the buyer has no representation." So my concern is that if a listing agent isn't strong enough to share with, it can help convince the seller that it's only to their best interest to provide money, and that buyer, after trying to buy a couple homes, then he hopefully not, but starts going directly to the listing agent, thinking that I can avoid that then. Now suddenly nobody's representing the buyer. Okay, and that's how it was, because everybody knew that everybody represented actually the seller, even though the seller was paying the buyer. And then it wasn't until there was a lot of calamity in the buyer's worlds that finally the buyer said, "Well, this isn't right. I need representation." And so that's when they came up with what has been working for the last 30 plus years. Okay. So that's where part of my concern is. That so I put the greater pressure. We as professionals We must be able to convey our value. We must say that with confidence. We must say that with conviction. And we must walk that out then, because we're going to, again, like Carrie Ann just said, we're going to be calling our own responsibility to do the things we say we're going to do for those people. Yeah. But we also have to, as listing agents, do a great job. Yeah, you don't have to pay anything to anybody, okay? Everything's negotiable. But it's going to be to your best if we don't put that burden on the buyer. But because here's my conviction, Mr. Seller. Call me crazy, but I believe equity dollars spend easier than pocket dollars.
Sure.
It's easier to, that home is, and it's a great asset, it's been building in value and so forth. That to me is a lot less painful, especially if you look at, let's say there's 10 buyers for your property, but only a third of those have the funds to pay for a professional. Mm-hmm. We just narrowed the potential buyers of your property, and guess how that's going to affect your sale price?
Yeah.
It's going to have a negative effect on your sale price. So I think, to me, from my perspective, equally as important is being able to convey to the seller the importance of offering that other side, and not saying, well, I get to save that money. No, you can look at it that way, but it's going to affect your eventual sale price in many cases.
Well, I think you're fighting against a lot of human nature with all this too.
Oh yeah.
That's why, like, for sale by owners and folks that choose not to be represented are doing what they're doing because people are stubborn and they think that they know how to do stuff.
Right.
And the only way a lot of folks, and I'm one of them, learn is by
experience.
Trying,
screwing it up.
Screwing it up, yeah. Yeah.
And so I think we're just going to have to continue to deal with human nature the way we always have.
I do think stories do sell. So I do think being prepared with the story of just the FSBO, right? Like just the client who tries to sell their home by themselves because they think it's going to save $1, right? Just like you and I go shopping on this online site because it's so-called saves $1. Well, I see the materials coming back to me at the saved price and it just fell apart in my hands. It's the same difference, right? So there are ways to make everybody feel comfortable, but it's all about communicating and getting them to understand. I think when we force people, see it my way, they need to see it their way, which is our way. Like communicate it.
Well, if we have the right heart, that we're truly trying to be of service, we're not trying to manipulate anybody. We want the best for all parties. I've always said, you have your client, you're representing, I have mine, but I want to also represent the integrity of the transaction, so nobody feels like, nobody limps when they leave. Everybody feels like a win. And it's hard sometimes to do that, but we should try to strive for that, because then we don't have the black eye as an industry, from one respect anyhow.
Through education, though, is what I was trying to, through making sure they understand, that piece I think is key. But if you just come out of the gate with no data, with no stories, with no, strength in what you're saying, to back up your story, I think that makes it a little more difficult.
Yeah, I like that. Question. I think that having those conversations with your clients and being able to say, well, let me tell you about Joe and Sarah and their situation and what they tried to do and how that worked out for them.
Right.
And giving them some kind of context, it definitely...
There's a reason why Jesus talked in parables, and told stories like that. They convey a lot clearer picture. Speaking of which, since you are the master of this information rather than me share it, let's talk through this so that we can give some context to the message that we want to share.
So, I wrote these two scripts, one for buyers and one for sellers. I tried to keep it real simple for the people that I was teaching at the time and for those of you that are listening. And basically the goal of each conversation was to answer questions about commissions, right? That's the buyers are going to have questions. So when I started the conversation with my buyers, the way that my script kind of, and again, I always talk about like a script is, it's more like guidelines, right? Remember Pirates of the Caribbean?
Internalize it and then be real with it.
You want to have you want to have the rule and kind of an idea, a skeleton, but use your own personality and your own words. But basically, I started out by saying, I'm sure you've heard about the commission conversation going on in America right now. Now, if
I love that question, because that
Yeah.
sets the temperature at that
Yeah,
point.
you're not telling them what to think or believe.
Right,
You're just
right.
asking them, have you heard about this?
Right, exactly.
And so that helps, because
Oh,
if
I
they
agree.
haven't heard about
Love it.
then that makes the conversation a lot easier.
Totally different.
You don't have to go through a lot.
They don't have
of the
preconceived
stuff.
ideas.
Yeah, you can still explain things to them and educate them, and they don't have this backdrop of CNN told me that you
Right.
all get the same commission.
Right. Right.
And it's never negotiable, which are all lies that we've heard.
Right.
But basically, I say, that's so, and I tell them, here's some questions that you might hear. Like, am I going to have to pay your commission? How much do I have to pay you? What am I going to do? Like, I feel like some buyers are just going to throw their hands up in the air and go, what am I going to do?
Right. Right.
And so when they ask those questions, I tell people, start out positive. Be like, well, I'm so glad you asked that question. That's a
I love that
really
response.
good question.
I'm so glad.
Because I knew I was going to have to answer this with people.
You're not defending anything. You're not trying to hide from anything. You're not ignoring the white elephant in the corner of the room.
And
I'm so glad you asked that question.
Yes, and then you can kind of, at that point, you have a choice. I think at that point you can just, like, if they ask you directly, how much do you charge? You can tell them that. Like, just be like, well, I charge X percent or whatever. This is what my normal things. But before we really get into all of that and why, let's talk about how this process works. And so I go through the process and explain to them traditionally how listing agents negotiate their listing commission with the seller. And part of that commission has traditionally been a buyer's agent incentive has been included in that. That's why we have the number 6 in our mind, because we think that's what everybody negotiates, but it's not that number. It's whatever they agree to.
Yeah.
And then oftentimes what will happen in that situation, and most of the time this way it's been working, is that a buyer's agent can bring a client to that house as a part of the marketing budget for that listing agent. That listing agent will take a portion of their commission and give it to them. And so, like, I talked to several people, lenders that I knew that had been doing this for 20 and 30 years. Nobody had ever even explained that much to them, that it's not the seller doesn't pay the buyer's agent.
Right.
The seller pays the listing agent.
The listing
and the
agent
listing agent's
shares.
company shares a portion of it with the buyer's
Right.
company. And, like, people didn't know that. And I'm like, well, that's just basic 101 how we all get paid stuff. And she's like, yeah, I've been doing this 28 years and never heard that.
And is that because on the CD that we see, it's broken down?
Probably.
Yeah, that's probably
And
because
it
we don't,
looks
we
like
don't
on
see
the
that
CD, it
because it
looks
is
like
separate.
the buyer gets paid.
Yeah,
this,
it's
the
been
seller
it's been
gets
divided
this.
before
Yeah.
you ever see it. However,
But there is that compensation agreement that we've been signing every time we send over an offer, a compensation agreement between our broker, not us as the agent, but our broker and their broker. And so that's what we're asking for. Hey, will you do that during that? And I guess that's all probably going to change a little bit. I'm sure some of the communication
and
of that.
not to sidetrack anything here, but that alone is what I never understood. What's the problem?
Yeah.
They're not even, they're paying the listing agent. Listing agents sees our value because they don't want to be the only one that's gone out there fishing.
Well,
and that buyer.
And the buyer's the one paying for the whole damn thing.
Exactly. Thank you.
So,
but that's a whole other story.
Anyway.
When I was in Florida, again, another side street, but I think this might play into it in the future. I don't know. But before I came here, I was working I was a realtor in Florida, and all my offers at that time said, it was a cover page that said, my client has agreed to pay me, in this case, a 3.5% commission. And they have considered that amount of money has been considered in the offer. For ease of operation, they are requesting you to pay me that amount of money, which they have agreed to pay me, which is the 3.5%. So it was presented on the front end. That's what I'm getting paid, and it was presented as that is part of the offer.
Yeah.
So to me, that's probably maybe somewhere how we're going with this eventually. I know we can't currently make offers subject to a commission amount. At the same time, we can make a phone call and say, gee, I'd like to, my client's showing some interest in your property, but they don't have the money to pay me, and this is what I'm used to making. Will you reconsider what you're offering?
Yeah.
That's okay, but it's not okay to write the offer that way. So anyhow, there's a lot of dust in the air that still have to come down. But I didn't mean to distract. But
no,
but that's
okay.
That's how. And I went to an attorney years ago and said, look, this is how I did it in Florida. He goes, well, you're no longer in Kansas, buddy. You're in you're in Tennessee, and that's not how we do it here. You can't make an offer subject to a commission amount, but that's how I did it down there.
Yeah.
So you cannot say, I'm writing this on behalf of my buyer?
You can't make an offer subject to a certain commission dollar if it's not being offered.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So if I don't know.
You can make a phone call and say, hey, Carrie Ann, I see your listing here fits my buyer's criteria, but they've instructed me not to show property that doesn't offer what I am charging. So they can tell you, no, I don't have the money, so let's not look at that property.
So
that's
what
legal.
if folks answer, send me an offer, and are they required to tell you how much the commission is based upon that?
Yeah, to me, that's where the biggest hardship's going to be, is getting that agent to respond, because I don't want to speak for anybody, but if I'm one of those agents who doesn't communicate well, and I'm one of those agents that's selling my service on a discounted effort and not a full service effort, but solely depending on the lower commission. See, I've done things aggressively when it comes to commission, but I always offered everything I could give. I don't have a regulator on my service. I give it all. That's all I know how to give, regardless of what's in return for that. But
so this is what was going around earlier today. At buyer's instruction, buyer's purchase price offer is contingent on seller agreeing to pay blank percentage purchase price or so much money towards buyer's agent compensation at closing. Or you're saying that can't be stated?
NAR says you can't do it in writing. At the same time, the next paragraph says that you can make a phone call and ask. So
what I'm saying in writing, this is under the contract.
Yeah, I think that's where we're going to have to go, honestly. But right now, to my knowledge, unless something's changed that I don't know about, you can't make an offer subject to a certain commission amount that's not being conveyed in MLS. And what I was getting at earlier is that getting agents to return your call when you've asked, because let's say, for instance, let's say you got somebody flying in from California tomorrow, and they've chosen 5 homes they want to see. First thing I'm going to do is get on the phone and communicate with each of those people after August 17th. Or whenever MLS changes, and say, hey, what are you offering? What are you offering as compensation? What is the seller offering, rather, from compensation for selling their property? I'm just guessing, but I'll bet you at least 2 of those 5 won't return a phone call. Especially though, here's the kicker. And again, I don't want to I'm not trying to speak things into existence here, guys, because I want everybody to be professional. Damn it, if we were professionals across the board, we wouldn't be dealing with this topic. I'll just leave that there, okay?
How do you really feel, Monty?
Well, I mean, seriously.
I felt that heat coming off of your body.
Yeah, but you know what I'm talking about is true.
Yeah,
okay?
No, I feel it too.
So if I'm somebody who doesn't want to, I want to sell my house so I can get my commission, but I got in the door by offering a lower one, and I'm not offering the buyer side anything, I'd be tempted if I was that person. I am not that person. If I were that person, I'd be tempted not to return the phone call, so it'd be shown anyhow, only for the agent to find out, well, but my client loves this house. This is their dream home. What do you do in that situation,
Yeah.
I'm reckoning me and my agents to do all they can to help facilitate that transaction and look at the bigger picture, because as much as we all need to make the money, it's about creating the friend. Okay.
Yeah.
It's about that. And I think, that's one of the things I love about you.
And something I jump in with my thing is, I've learned the hard way multiple times where I stuck to my guns on how much my commission was.
Yeah.
And I lost opportunities to have future business with those people because I wasn't humble enough and flexible enough to go, you know what, I'll take a small cut and still get something and maintain the relationship with this person. And I feel like what we fail to see a lot of times in our stubbornness to just, I'm only going to make X amount, I'm only going to charge this. If you want to get less, you're going to find another realtor. But in our effort to try to be staunch about that, and I get it, you're valuable and you are worth that for asking.
We're worth that much and more.
But at the same time, over time, what you really find is that every person that you serve is potentially 3, 4, 5 more potential sales in their lifetime. And they have a sphere of friends that you have access to when you're in relationship to them that could be referral business. And who knows how much how that can multiply. So like when you choose to just die on the hill of, I got to make this commission on this transaction, you are actually sacrificing all of your future business with that person because of your stubbornness to not take a smaller commission.
That's a huge point that you make, Art. I'm so glad you said that. I'm so glad, because here's the frosting on that theory, okay?
Yeah.
That makes it real, in my, again, humble opinion. It's this law called the law of reciprocity.
Yeah.
When people see you giving and you're laying your life down, but they can't compensate you, guess what most of them are going to want to do? They're going to look, they're going to be intentional about finding business they can send to you, because they know that you honored the relationship more than you honored making that money, as much as you know they know, and you know that you earned it. Mm-hmm. And I agree with that 1,000%. I'm so glad you brought that up.
But how do you know that they want less?
What do you mean?
Meaning, right? So you share your worth and your number, and then it ends. It does. Similar to loan officers, we hear this a lot, right? And I'm never big a believer in sending a fee sheet out because they just take it and run it to a Rocket or this or that, another competitor.
Right.
We're sharing our worth, our guarantee to close, all the things. And if you are choosing to, I want you to get the best deal, possible, and I want you to feel comfortable and confident throughout all type of thing. So unless I ask and walk through that, I don't know, that this needs to happen or that. You want to give them the best deal. You want them to see all that we're offering makes sense for a client. So how do you know that you need to sharpen your pencil a little bit to lessen, that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that again, it comes down to a conversation with that particular buyer
and maybe seeing facial expressions and,
actually having a face-to-face conversation and not just a text or, phone call. And then being able to kind of read people, it just takes, it means like actual relationship with your client, right? Like you actually have to have a relationship to where there's trust that's built, that you can actually communicate some of this stuff, and you need to ask questions. I think
lots of questions.
Yeah. You have to go, and you can feel people out a lot of times. You'd be like, I can tell that this conversation is making you a little uncomfortable. Let's speak to that for a minute. Let's talk about the elephant in the room. You're uncomfortable. I'm talking about my commission. What do you want? Where I'm at, where you're at, are we in alignment, or do we need to talk about that? And ask them for permission and give them permission to discuss a lower commission or or whatever, and let them just be honest and vulnerable with you without you being just a butthole, and just be honest. Don't be a jerk with people, but listen to them, care about what they want, what they're looking for. I mean, I think all this comes down to is just treating human beings as human beings. They want to be treated with respect. They want to be treated with care and love, and they want you to serve them. And the truth is that you serve them. They don't serve you.
That's right.
It's not about, it's not about you. It's not about how much money you're making or how great of a realtor you are, or how many Instagram posts you can put out there with pictures of you and your client closing on a house. As much as that's important for us to do because we need to promote ourselves, it's not about that. It's about how do we care about this person enough to just have the honest conversation.
But also there's going to be, and we have to be okay with the fact that some of the people are not our people.
Sure.
So some people are going to call me and ask me, what is your rate? They don't care about this. They don't care about that. They just care about this one thing. They may just lead with, what's your fee? Yeah. Right. And you can do all the things and share. So that's the only other piece to this is then we're going to race to the bottom, right?
That's
of who's going to have the least. And that's going to be okay. They're just not your people. We have to be okay with walking away and finding our people that see our worth.
And I will tell you, because I've always been one of the opinion that, well, there's plenty of business for all of us, right? Like I've always had that kind of mentality. You look at the numbers this last year, the pie was smaller. There wasn't plenty of business for all of us.
Right.
And so there is a sense in which good financial management as agents, learning how not to just go out and blow all of our commissions on a nice vacation at, wherever, understanding that we are in a time where everybody's kind of tightening their purse strings a little bit more.
Right.
And so it does hurt more right now. We're June 2024. It hurts more right now when your buyer decides to go to a different agent and because they're taking less commission, right? That does hurt more. And you got to admit that, and you got to be willing to, but you also have to go, like you said, But if this isn't working between us, and this is just, at the end of the day, it comes down to numbers. Again, I still believe that 100% of nothing kind of sucks. So get a smaller percentage of something than 100% of nothing.
Keep the relationship in place.
And if you can't salvage that client, then you can't salvage.
Yeah. And it wasn't your client to have. Yeah. And that was the
time.
hardest thing for me to learn over the last couple of years is it's because, I want it all. I don't want to lose. You feel like a failure. But then you realize that person's just not your person, and it's okay. You need to get back up and, go walk with confidence for the next.
And that's true. And you can keep them in your mind while you're still out there looking. And if you see something, again, you're not going to get paid for this, but if they were your buyer or whatever, and they were looking and they choose a different realtor, and you run across something that is good for them, do the right thing. Call that realtor up and be like, hey, you're working with my past client. Cool. That's great. I just want to let you know this house is here. They might want to they might see, you may not know this one's here. Those are the kinds of things I think that endear us to the other agents in our area, because we are having to do so much business with other agents that everything we're doing is building rapport with everybody that we're doing business with, because at some point down the road, you might be working with that agent on something, and they'll remember that you called and helped that client, even though it wasn't your money to gain or your commission to gain, because you just did something kind and good for somebody else.
Yeah, similar. I'll call lenders and walk them through how to do it, because
they're not your competition.
No,
they are, but they're not. We should. I think it's John Acuff that talks about in one of his books. If you're an architect in a town and there's another architect in town, you should get to know that other architect. You should get to know that other person really, really well. So, because they're going to have a way of doing their business that's different than you. You're going to have different, you can bring things to the table for each of you that is valuable. And so instead of seeing each other as competition all the time, just see each other as collaborators, that we're trying to serve as many people as we possibly can. And there's going to be some people that are going to work with you, but they're not going to work with somebody, or they're going to work with somebody else, but not with you. And it's okay. We just need to stop getting butthurt over all that kind of stuff.
I had a real epiphany when I recently read the Ninja Selling.
Yeah.
You read that book?
Larry Kendall? Yeah. It's really good.
The epiphany was 15% of humanity is going to go with the cheapest.
Yeah.
5% of humanity is going to go with the most expensive. They just want the most expensive. 80% are going to go with the best value.
Yeah.
I've gotten to a point after that revelation that when we sit down with, having a office, a model that pays our agents 100%, I just started cutting to the chase here lately, saying, look, tell me about you, first of all. I can tell you about us, but tell me about you. What's most important? If you're looking for the cheapest gig in town, we aren't that. Okay. Yeah. We're just not. No offense to the ones who are, but we're not the cheapest. I think we're the best value, but we're not the cheapest. And I think it helps to, like you said earlier, to find out what their concerns are about this situation, because there's a couple things to work through. One of those choices now is that if you know that, for instance, that you're charging, let's pick a number out of the sky, 2.5%, and they can give you the permission to not show them properties that aren't offering at least 2.5%. You have that ability now. So that's one way to approach it. So I don't think that just because somebody doesn't have the money, and we know they don't have the money because they barely got the down payment, according to Carrie Ann and her team, that's one option that we give them. And just from an old guy's perspective, I honestly think right now the market is slowing down, and it's not a good time of year to slow down, but it could be part of our saving grace, because as the homes sit, suddenly our value is going to increase in the perception of the consumer. It just is.
Yep.
So I think, I don't want to see a slower market, because there's pain that goes along with that.
Right.
But at the same time, I'm equally concerned of our industry that it remain intact, because it's dependent on the professionals, not the agents out there, but the professionals for its longevity.
Well, and people are looking for the agents that are active. They're looking for the ones that are out there doing it, and that are not just sitting around on their laurels waiting for something to come to them.
Right, and do have that flexible approach.
Yeah.
I think
I think, and that's, and to the, like we were talking about, like social media and stuff. To earlier, probably before we started this conversation, but that's where I think we can bring that aspect in. People are seeing us on social media, and if they see us active on that, there's a sense and a perception that we're actually doing something.
Yeah.
But smoke and mirrors, a lot of it. Like a lot of you're not doing anything, but you're just showing a picture of yourself once, like 5 minutes a day, doing something at a house, and everybody thinks that you're super busy.
Yeah.
It can be a little deceiving, but at the same time, I think if you really are actually doing business in the people are going to see that, and as the market slows down, they're going to pick the agents that they see more, that they sense are more professional, and the ones that are honest with them and have these honest conversations with them about these kind of things.
And are willing to, like you said earlier, have that face to face, because a lot of people won't spend the gas money to go across town to meet with somebody because they'd rather shortcut that. And by doing so, sometimes they're shooting yourself in the foot.
Yeah.
And work closely with your partners to make sure that all options are available for the buyer when moving in a forward direction. So maybe, they need concessions, right, for closing costs, or maybe, down payment, or maybe we're going to do 100% so they can utilize some of their extra money for the just in case if they can't find a house that, has a seller paying, commission. I do think, going back to the 80-20 rule, I think 80% of the sellers are going to be wise, and 20% are going to try to, push the boundary a little bit, I would think. But work closely with your partners. Have those conversations early, I think, is key. And also a nice thing that I heard the other day, as I was with a 40-year-old veteran in the building business. Okay. And he said to me, this settlement states that I don't have to, as a builder, pay commission. Right? He said that. He said, I would be a stupid man and a stupid builder if I ever did that, and he's like, I understand the importance of the real estate agent. They make,
that's a good builder.
And that's great. And I think there's a lot of really good builders out here as well, that will continue. And he plans to continue to pay a full 3%, across the board. Not
that there's a set number.
Yes, I'm so sorry.
That's the one he chose.
I apologize. Yeah, that's what he chose. My bad. I'm so sorry. But yes, and it was great to hear that. I mean, he's been doing it for 40 years here in Nashville and understanding the importance of the real estate.
That's a good builder.
I think that was great.
What's that builder's name?
Yes, and I'm messing up all the time, so we won't say anything right now. But he was a good gentleman.
That's a builder you want to shout the name from the housetop. So we've gotten distracted or off track so many times here. The goal here was to go through your script.
That's okay. Basically, the way that my script, because I spent a lot of time talking about the actual process, because I go through in this script, I actually give the process of how this works traditionally. And then at the end of the script, I talk about the two things that NAR has said that, we have to, and we talk about that in the script. And I tell them one of the ways, let's see, I say offers of compensation to a buyer's agent can no longer be listed in the MLS. So I tell the buyer in that moment, I'm like, so here's what we're going to have to do. This is what we're communicating to them at this point. Here's what I'm going to need to do. If you see a house you like, I'm going to have to call the listing agent on the other side, and I'm going to have to find out, are they paying me? And so part of our conversations, and I know these are conversations that brokers are going to be having with their agents about protocol and how you all want to encourage your agent, because it'll be different in every brokerage. But there are different options that are going to be out there, lots of different options. There's going to be flat fees, there's going to be reduced fees, there's going to be graduated commission type of plans. Well, if you want me to serve you this way, then here's how much it is. If you want me to serve you this extra level, it's going to be this much. And so like there's different options that we're going to have. And so I don't go over all of those detailed, because I left that really for brokers to be able to do that. But I did throw that in here as these are conversations you're going to need to have with your broker about what is the best way for us to communicate to our buyers how we get paid through this process. And then I always tell them, let me be clear, it's never been required for sellers to offer buyer's agent incentives. Never been a requirement.
I think that's an important part of the message.
It's a huge part of this. What we have found over the years, when a seller pays enough of a commission to the listing agent where they're able to give a portion of their commission as an incentive to a buyer's agent to bring a qualified buyer and offer that buyer representation, it has generally benefited both the buyer and the seller in the transaction. I will call the listing agent and ask if they are offering an incentive for every home. It's going to be annoying because there is going to be, especially listing agents who have multiple listings, you'll call them and they have like 50 listings and they're going to have to stop what they're doing or they're going to have some kind of a plan.
Workaround of some sort.
Right? They're, like we talked about having like a a separate phone line or something where you can dial 1 for 123 Main
Ann's
Street.
idea, by the way.
Yeah.
Great
Thank you,
idea.
Carrie Ann.
It's a great idea. Or they'll have to have a list somewhere that's easy access for them to be able to look at it quickly and go, oh, that one's that much. I think you're going to see a lot of creative people trying to create websites. We were talking about that earlier on, that are not necessarily MLSs, but actually can put all those out for people. Again, it is going to be a little crazy and wild. But again, the way my script, what I try to do is explain to people the process, explain the value. Basically, what my script is about is telling them, here's all the stuff I'm doing for you. So that by the time you get to the end of the conversation and then you tell them how much your commission is, they're like, oh gosh, you do a ton.
Yeah. But no guarantees, because I only get paid if we get to the finish line.
That's it. And how many, I mean, that's it. And you're telling these folks this, like, listen, I don't get paid if you don't close on a house. So this is a lot of work I'm going to do for you in hopes that, so here's why I need you to pay. I need you to sign the buyer's agent agreement now. We're going to have to get people to sign that agreement on the front end now, which I think is great.
Yeah.
I do fear the agents that are just buttholes, that are just going to hold people to those contracts when they're not happy with their buyer's agent because they're not doing their job.
Yeah.
And maybe brokers. I've dealt with brokers in the past who have not released clients and consumers from stuff, which over stupid stuff. Like, I'm like, listen, if they're not happy, they're not happy with your agent, they're not happy with your company, let them go.
Yeah. Please.
But that's the only thing I don't really like about that requirement. But at the same time, it also gives us the ability to tell our buyers, I can't show you houses until you sign this agreement with me. But I also tell people that if the only thing holding you and me together is this piece of paper, I'm not doing my job right. So
I love that.
But still sign this piece of paper.
Well, I think it's also just can't occur to me just now, and I should have before now, but I think that we can also back that up with, if you're considering work with an agent who's not requiring this, that agent already has broken the law.
Yeah.
You know, that's, I think, going to be an important
conversation.
Point. Well, look, this has been awesome. Once again, how do we get a hold of you when people want to talk to you?
Yeah, you can go to my website, www.artkelly.org. You can email me directly at artkellyrealtor@gmail.com.
And they can get the entire scripts that you have.
Yeah, I'll send them to you.
Okay.
Just email me directly and I'll send it to you. Just email me or go to my website. You can find me on, or you can just call me. My phone number.
Art, I love your heart. I really do. And, I'm certainly impressed the first time I saw you present this information at Carrie Ann's event. And I'm grateful that you spent some time with us today. We're going to need to get together again. I know I'd like to talk about, next time we get together, I'd like to talk about this FriendMaker book. Yeah. That's, to me, what it's all about is making friends. Yeah. Making friends.
Well, thank you guys
and
for
you're
having
my friend there, Art.
Yeah.
You too, Monty.
Thank you, Carrie Ann.
Thank you, everybody, for listening. We're looking forward to having you join us next week. You've been listening to The Talk, Music City Real Estate.